Behind me I have an Arbequina olive tree. This is a Spanish variety. It's a dwarf. It'll only top out around 15 feet. This variety does produce a black olive, purplish black olive, and is known to be on the small side, one of the smallest varieties you can grow. While the olives are small, they do contain pretty high oil content. However, most people don't press this variety because it's a very small size. They'll actually preserve this using a curing process instead, or even salt them, which I am going to show you both of those methods in this video. The vast majority of the olives will ripen up between end of September to early October on this variety. While there are some green olives still remaining on the tree, 90% have ripened. So at this point, I'm going to go ahead and harvest what I can today. When it comes to harvesting, there's a couple different methods you can try. One popular one is to lay down tarps and then use a rake to knock loose the olives onto that tarp. And then you can gather them up, clean off the stems and any leaves, and place them in a bucket. The more tedious method is to just hand pick each individually off the tree. Sometimes you have to resort to that. At least with this variety, they tend to really cling to the stems even when they're ripe. They only will fall easily when they're overly ripe and actually have been slightly dehydrated on the tree and are all wrinkled up. You can also use the method in between, which I found to be probably the best, which is to just run your hand alongside the branch and knock off the olives. The rake can damage it, and also it's kind of hit or miss. With your hands, you can really, feel where they're at and knock them loose. What falls on the tarp is inevitably a mix of olives. You're going to get some leaves, of course, so you have to pick through all this. You'll get some that are overly ripened. And this will work actually if you're going to do a salt curing process to preserve. This will not work if you're going to brine these. Okay, after a couple hours of work, this is what I'm ending up with. It doesn't look like a whole lot. It's because they're so small, that they're not taking up a whole lot of volume. Okay, for this next stage, we're going to take each olive, again, very tedious, and we're going to just score it. So just with a knife, just make a cut and put it into another bucket. And we will do that with each and every olive. It is an hour later, and I have scored about 600 olives by hand. Very tedious process for this. So at this point, we're going to go ahead and get these submerged in water. This is a process that you'll have to do every day for 21 days. Or until the olives don't taste bitter to you. This bucket has been filled with water. The one thing you do want to make sure is that the olives do not rise above the water line, since that'll expose them to oxygen. Oxidation will damage the olives, hinder the curing process. So I've just got this glass plate here that I'm going to go ahead and stick right on top, and that's going to ensure that the olives don't float up. So our olives have been in water curing for about 3 weeks now. I've been changing the water daily, and it's now ready to go to the next stage where we're going to actually jar them up. Before we do that, it's always a good idea to flavor your olives. You can use peppers, you can use garlic, really any kind of herb that you want. What I'm going to do here is at the bottom of each jar, I'll be putting in some variegated lemons from my backyard. They happen to be in season right now. I also have some rosemary here from my backyard, and then some garlic that I picked up at Sprouts. And we'll just be filling the bottom of these preserving jars. Before we pack them with the olives and then put our brine solution on top. So just to prep these, this is what I'll be doing. Just take a jar, stick in your lemon slice at the very bottom. Kind of pack that in. Okay, the brine solution is done and I've packed already some of these jars. For my brine solution, I used 1 gallon of water dissolved in 1.5 cups of coarse sea salt, and then I added in 4 cups of red wine vinegar. So with the olives, you just want to pack these into the jar tightly. Leave a little bit of headspace, but really pack them in tight. Push down with your fingers. And then we're going to just pour in our brine solution. Leave a little bit of headspace. And we're going to add some olive oil on top of that before we seal this off. Okay, we're just going to put a thin layer of olive oil on top. And of course, make sure you sterilize these before. When turning these, don't overpower it, just turn it until it's snug. And then this should self-seal with how hot the water is. Okay, our olives are all complete at this point, canned up. What I plan to do is I will just let these jars cool down and then stick them in the fridge. And they'll store there for a year. They need a month anyways just to assimilate their flavor before you can really taste test them. They're going to get better with time. If you want to just store them room temperature in a pantry, then you definitely need to go through the process of pressure canning them. We'll come back in a month and taste these. Okay, we are done harvesting. So this is a 1 gallon food grade bucket. Filled it pretty much all the way up. That's approximately 600 olives. On my tree I have, I want to say roughly 3,000 olives. So this is a multi-phased approach. You're going to have to harvest several times because they're not all ripening at once. This batch of olives we're going to use probably the simplest method to preserve, which is the salt method. This was developed thousands of years ago. So we've washed our olives here, dried them off. I've got this glass pan here that has a airtight seal top. And what we're going to just do is simply coat the bottom here with olives. And beyond the olives and your containers, you'll need salt. That's how we're going to preserve this. You'll need coarse grain sea salt. Don't get the fine grain stuff, you'll need coarse for this. And the method is pretty simple. Dry them off, then layer them in your container. And you're going to pour salt on top. Make sure to coat your olives. Okay, wash and dried some more. Just going to continue layering up these olives. So what will happen with this method is each day the salt is going to draw liquid out of the olives to help dry them out. So while I'm using a glass container, I will just mention that some people will use a Hessian bag or even shade cloth to hold the olives in the salt and let that drain out, and then, you know, they'll flip that bag, agitate it basically every day. So I just want to get a nice coating of salt on these olives. This method's super simple. You know, you just basically wash your olives, stick them in a container, and then layer in the salt. Make sure it's covered. This will be going into a closet, you know, in the dark to cure. And then every day I will take it out and just shake up that container. Liquid will accumulate at the bottom. That's expected. As these olives start dehydrating from the salt. After 2 weeks, I'll go ahead and rinse all the salt off, and then I'll be using a vacuum sealer and olive oil along with some herbs to preserve them. Again, I'll be sticking these in the fridge. These aren't going to store at, you know, room temperature. You're going to want the refrigeration to ensure there's no bacterial growth and things like that. Hope this video was helpful if you have access to olives or even have your own tree. They can be very productive, and once you have a good harvest, it's a wonderful thing to be able to preserve these olives and enjoy them. You know, conventional grown olives oftentimes use lye. Yes, lye, the stuff that, you know, you use to clean your drain. No. So just a couple of organic methods to try out. I'll do an update in a month or so on both taste tests of the salt cured method here as well as the brine method. Thanks for watching.